On a weekend morning as Chicago's spring sunlight filtered between the skyscrapers, Amanda Griffin was brewing coffee in her apartment kitchen while staring at a date circled on her calendar. Her 32nd birthday. And finally, she would be returning home after 3 years away. Outside the window, winds from the lake rustled the fresh green trees, heralding spring's arrival. Chicago had been her refuge, a place to rebuild herself. After college graduation, she had built a new life in this city, far from her small Pennsylvania hometown. Her career at the accounting firm was going well. Last month, she'd secured a promotion to senior accountant. Her colleagues respected her, and life in Chicago was fulfilling. However, when it came to going home, she always felt an invisible weight settle on her chest. "Amanda, there's a special surprise this year, so make sure you come home for your birthday." The words from her mother Patricia's phone call last week kept repeating in her head. Her mother's voice had an unusual excitement in it. Usually these calls just conveyed family news in a matter-of-fact manner, but this time was different. Amanda sighed deeply. Gazing at the steam rising from her coffee cup, memories of home surfaced and faded in succession. Her father Walter owned the town's long-standing pharmacy. Locals trusted him, saying, "You can go to Mr. Griffin for advice about anything." But at home, he was always strict with Amanda, sometimes even cold. Her mother Patricia, a former high school teacher, now devoted herself to community volunteer work. Though gentle and kind-hearted, she was always obedient in Walter's presence, never opposing his decisions. And her sister Brittany worked at a local real estate company. Since childhood, she had been her father's favorite, receiving expensive birthday presents and designer items. Even now, she made no effort to hide her sense of superiority over Amanda. "You're the older sister, so you need to be patient. Brittany is still little." These were phrases Amanda heard often as a child. With each sacrifice forced upon her for her sister's sake, she began to question her own worth. Taking a sip of coffee, Amanda picked up her smartphone. The screen displayed a photo of herself taken last week. Dressed in a polished suit with a confident expression. In Chicago, Amanda was a successful career woman, an independent individual. But back home, would she revert to being the impatient older sister again? Especially with her sister Brittany, their rivalry had intensified into adulthood, always trying to outdo each other with success stories at family gatherings. Brittany would accuse Amanda of putting on elite airs, and point out her flaws in front of their parents. Whenever this happened, Amanda would make a habit of excusing herself early and leaving the family home. While folding clothes into her suitcase, Amanda pondered the meaning of special surprise. Would her parents suddenly acknowledge her achievements and express pride? Or was it just her mother's exaggeration, with nothing more than an ordinary birthday cake awaiting her? Either way, she had decided to approach this visit differently. No more getting hurt. No more expectations. Just a firm awareness that she controlled her own life as she returned home. After packing her last items, Amanda locked her apartment door. Taking a deep breath, she headed to the airport. This year might actually be a special birthday, she thought as she left Chicago behind. When Amanda arrived in the small Pennsylvania town, she felt nostalgia mixed with anxiety welling up inside her. Through the taxi window, familiar sights from her childhood rolled by, the old street lamps on Main Street, the town hall clock tower, and the brick building of her father's, Griffin Pharmacy. She smiled quietly at how the town seemed frozen in time. As the taxi stopped in front of the family home, Patricia was standing at the entrance. Her mother, with more white hair now, spread her arms wide upon seeing Amanda. "Amanda. You've finally come home." As Amanda surrendered to her mother's embrace, she caught the familiar scent, cinnamon and vanilla, her mother's favorite perfume. "Where's Dad?" Amanda asked, and Patricia's expression clouded slightly. "At the pharmacy. It's Wednesday, so he won't be back until evening." Amanda said nothing more. She hadn't expected Walter to leave work early for her arrival. Entering the living room, the same furniture arrangement and family photos on the wall greeted her as 3 years ago. But looking closer, she noticed new photos had been added, Brittany closing a real estate deal, golfing with their father, and last year's Christmas family photo. Amanda wasn't in any of them. "Let's put your things in your room and rest a bit." We'll wait for Brittany before dinner, Patricia said. Amanda nodded silently and headed upstairs to her room. Opening the door, her high school room welcomed her unchanged. The trophies and certificates she'd earned in college were packed away in boxes in the closet. Meanwhile, the walls displayed photos of Brittany's high school days and childhood pictures of the two sisters together. Sitting on the bed with a deep sigh, Amanda took out her smartphone and sent a quick message to a colleague, arrived safely. Already being treated as second best. Time passed slowly, and as the sky turned sunset-colored, the front door opened. I'm home. Brittany's cheerful voice echoed through the house, followed by Walter's deeper tones. Apparently, her father had closed the pharmacy early to pick up Brittany. Amanda quietly descended the stairs and entered the living room. Sis. It's been ages. Brittany rushed over with a radiant smile and gave her a light hug. She was still beautiful and sophisticated, with an expensive designer bag over her shoulder and a new ring glittering on her finger. Amanda, Walter simply called her name without any further welcome. He looked tired as he sank into his leather chair. Now that everyone's here, let's have dinner, Patricia said brightly. The family gathered around the dining table looked, at first glance, like an ideal family scene. However, the conversation naturally revolved around Walter and Brittany. So how was the new client? Walter asked Brittany. Brittany smiled proudly. Perfect. The house on Baker Street, contract signing tomorrow. That meets my quota for the month. That's my girl. Walter beamed. Let's toast to that. He poured wine and raised his glass high. To Brittany's success. Amanda silently clinked her glass. Invisible to her father's eyes, she waited for a chance to share her own success. She had rehearsed her promotion story many times in her mind. Actually, I got promoted last month, Amanda said when finally addressed. I'm now a senior accountant. Is that so? Walter said dismissively. I suppose things like that come easy in the big city. But that's because you're in the city, it must be easier there, Brittany chimed in after her father. In a small town like ours, we have fewer connections, so it's much harder. Amanda silently stared at her plate. She no longer had the energy to explain that her promotion resulted from months of overtime and hard work. Amanda, tomorrow is your birthday, Patricia changed the subject. We've prepared a special surprise for you. Yes, a truly special one, Brittany added with a strange smile. There was sarcasm in her tone that made Amanda uneasy. What kind of surprise? Amanda asked, and her parents exchanged glances. You'll find out tomorrow, Patricia smiled, but her eyes weren't smiling. After dinner, Amanda helped clean up the kitchen while her mother updated her on the small town's news. Old friends' whereabouts, newly opened stores, closed businesses. Amid such pleasant conversation, laughter from Walter and Brittany could be heard from the living room. That night, Amanda rested in her room but couldn't fall asleep. As she gazed out the window, longing for her Chicago apartment, she heard soft noises from the hallway. Amanda quietly opened her door and listened. The voices of her father and sister whispering came from downstairs. Are we really telling Amanda about that tomorrow? Does it have to be now? Brittany's voice was filled with anxiety. It's time. We can't keep it secret any longer. Tomorrow morning, we'll tell her with the whole family present. Walter's voice was filled with determination. Amanda held her breath. What were they hiding? Had they kept some secret about her for years? Though disturbed by the ominous conversation, the feeling of having something hidden from her wasn't new to Amanda. Back in bed, various possibilities emerged and vanished in Amanda's mind. Had her father's business failed? Was her mother sick? Or... In the moonlight streaming through the window, Amanda prepared to face her birthday with a complex mixture of anxiety and expectation. The next morning, Amanda woke feeling strangely calm. Morning sunlight gently illuminated her room, making the curtains sway slightly. The clock showed 7 o'clock. Birthday morning? She took a deep breath and got out of bed. After showering, fixing her hair, and putting on a pale blue dress from her suitcase, Amanda finished her makeup and prepared herself mentally while looking at her reflection. Whatever happened, she wouldn't be hurt anymore. From downstairs came the sounds of dishes and quiet conversation. Amanda descended the stairs silently and headed for the kitchen. There stood Patricia preparing breakfast. "Good morning, Mom." Patricia turned around, her expression momentarily tense before she hurriedly smiled. "Amanda, good morning. Happy birthday." Her voice trembled. On the table were freshly baked cranberry muffins and coffee, Amanda's favorites. "Thank you," Amanda smiled back. "Where are Dad and Brittany?" "In the living room. Since today is special, we need to talk, all of us," Patricia said, averting her gaze. Amanda nodded silently and reached for a muffin. The taste of her mother's homemade recipe spread nostalgically in her chest. Years ago, birthday mornings were always special. Cake and presents, balloons and smiles, happy times. But after adolescence, birthday celebrations became somewhat perfunctory. "Come to the living room when you're ready," Patricia said quietly before leaving the kitchen. Amanda finished her muffin slowly and took a sip of coffee. Anxiety swirled deep inside her, but she tried to keep it from showing on her face. She wiped her mouth with a napkin, placed her coffee cup on the table, and slowly headed for the living room. With a tense expression, Amanda entered the living room through the heavy door. Already seated were her father Walter, mother Patricia, and sister Brittany. Everyone wore strangely tense expressions, and a heavy atmosphere hung in the room. "Amanda, sit down," her father Walter commanded. "We have something to tell you." Amanda quietly sat on the sofa, feeling her heart race. On the table lay a single envelope. The cream-colored old envelope had yellowed slightly with time. "First, happy birthday," Walter said formally. His voice was higher than usual, betraying his nervousness. "Today is a special day. It's time we told you the truth." Brittany sat in the corner of the sofa, wringing her hands in her lap. Despite her usual smug expression, she also seemed somewhat anxious. Patricia sat beside her husband, occasionally dabbing the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief. Amanda tried to remain calm as she looked at each family member's face. "What truth?" Father Walter slowly picked up the envelope and handed it to Amanda. "Open this," he said, his voice having a strange sense of relief, as if setting down a long-carried burden. Amanda received the envelope with trembling hands. Nothing was written on the surface. When she opened the seal and pulled out a document, the words "adoption certificate" jumped out at her, showing her name and birth date. "What is this?" Amanda gasped, feeling her mind go blank. "Yes, you're not our biological child," Mother Patricia said in a small voice. Tears welled in her eyes. "We adopted you when you were 3 months old." Brittany displayed a triumphant smile, declaring, "See? I'm the real daughter. You're just an extra." Her voice mixed long-standing jealousy with superiority. Father Walter continued, "Now the weight is off my shoulders. No more lies." He showed a relieved expression as he sat back deeply in his chair. Amanda stared at the adoption certificate, speechless. Various emotions swirled inside her: shock, sadness, anger, and a strange sense of release. So this was why her father had always been cold toward her. She was always second best because she wasn't his biological child. "Why didn't you tell me until now?" Amanda finally managed to say. "We thought you'd be hurt," Walter shrugged. "Besides, after Brittany was born, we didn't think it necessary anymore." "Not necessary?" Amanda's voice shook. "I had a right to know." "Oh, sis," Brittany said in a sickeningly sweet voice. "Don't get so upset. You're still part of this family. Just not the real thing." At that moment, a memory from last week flashed vividly in Amanda's mind. When she was organizing her mother Patricia's desk drawer, she had found another envelope. At the time, she hadn't paid much attention and returned it, but now she understood the significance of what was in that envelope. Amanda quietly stood up and said, "Then what about this?" She pulled another envelope from her handbag. It was identical to the one she had found in her mother's desk last week. A Pennsylvania University Hospital envelope. At that moment, the room's atmosphere froze, and the blood drained from Walter's face. Patricia let out a small cry, and Brittany looked at her parents with a confused expression. Where did you? Walter's voice trembled. I found it while organizing Mom's desk last week, Amanda said quietly. I didn't look inside at the time, but today I became curious. Amanda took papers from the envelope and spread them on the table. They were letters exchanged between her father Walter and a woman before Brittany was born, along with DNA test results for Walter and Brittany. The results were clear. Brittany had Walter's blood, but she wasn't Patricia's child. Dad, this woman is named Linda Morrison. Someone you met while traveling for the pharmacy. And according to these DNA test results, Brittany is the child of you and this woman, not Mom. Amanda's voice remained calm. Why did you? Walter stammered. His face turned pale, and his hands shook. You didn't know, Mom? Amanda turned to Patricia. Patricia stared at Walter with a pained expression. Her eyes reflected over 30 years of suffering and resignation. No. It's a lie. Brittany shouted. Her voice had become shrill. This must be fake. Amanda calmly continued, the test results bear Dr. Morrison's signature. He's the doctor you trust most, Dad. It can't be fake. A heavy silence fell over the living room. Morning light illuminated the 2 envelopes on the table. 2 secrets. 2 lives. Amanda looked into her mother's eyes. There was indescribable pain there, but also a strange sense of release. Mom. Amanda called out softly. Patricia slowly stood up and approached her daughter. Amanda. She touched Amanda's face with trembling hands. You are my daughter. Even without blood ties, you're my precious daughter. At those words, tears spilled from Amanda's eyes. A truth hidden for 32 years. And now, the moment when everything was revealed. A heavy silence hung in the living room. Father Walter held his head in his hands, sinking deep into his chair. He looked as if he'd aged 10 years overnight. Mother Patricia wept, clutching her handkerchief with trembling hands. Only Brittany desperately continued to deny reality. This is a lie. It's fabricated. Dad, say something. Brittany cried. Her voice shook with anger and fear. This isn't true. I am. But Walter remained silent. That silence told the whole story. The truth was clear. The 2 pieces of evidence spread on the table, Amanda's adoption certificate and the secret of Brittany's birth, were now undeniable realities. Amanda stood by the window, gazing outside. Pennsylvania's morning light illuminated the trees, and wind rustled the leaves. It seemed strange that the everyday landscape remained unchanged, while inside her, everything was falling apart. You've been lying to me for 32 years, Amanda said quietly. She turned to face her family and continued in a surprisingly calm voice. You kept my adoption a secret until today, and you've treated Brittany like your biological daughter, when in fact she isn't Mom's child. It's not a lie. Brittany shook her head violently. Mom, tell me. I am your daughter, aren't I? Patricia looked sadly at her daughter. Brittany. I've loved you like my own daughter. But I wasn't born from you? Brittany's voice trembled. Her eyes reflected deep sadness alongside anger. Walter finally spoke. Back then, Patricia and I desperately wanted children. But doctors said it would be difficult for her to have children. That's when we had the opportunity to adopt a baby, and that was you. He looked at Amanda. There was, for the first time, a frankness in his eyes. And you hid the fact that I was adopted? Why? Tears welled in Amanda's eyes. We were afraid of losing you. We thought you might look for your real parents. Walter faltered. Besides, after we took you in, my relationship with Patricia grew cold. But then I was born 4 years later. Like a miracle, Brittany interjected. There was still hope in her voice, a desperate wish to deny the truth. No, Patricia said quietly. She slowly stood up and approached the family photos displayed on the living room mantel. Brittany, you are. Walter was having an affair during his business trip, Patricia confessed tearfully. Her voice was heavy with over 30 years of suffering. With a nurse named Linda Morrison. She said she was pregnant. The townspeople knew nothing. To protect the town's reputation, we pretended I was pregnant, and agreed to take in the child when it was born. No way. Brittany stared at her mother with a pale face. So both Amanda and either of us are your real children. Brittany, you have Walter's blood. But, you're not my child, Patricia said painfully. Tears overflowed from her eyes and streamed down her cheeks. Lies. I'm Mom and Dad's child. I don't believe this. Brittany shouted, suddenly standing up and rushing out of the room. The sound of the front door slamming shut echoed throughout the house. The 3 remaining family members were left in silence. Only the ticking of the old wall clock resonated in the heavy atmosphere. Why did you tell me about the adoption today? Amanda asked. It couldn't have been mere coincidence to make such a revelation on her birthday. Walter heaved a deep sigh. Actually, Brittany was recently asked about her family medical history by a doctor. Some abnormality was found during her checkup. Linda, her biological mother, was discovered to have a specific genetic disorder, and Brittany needed to be tested, Patricia added. She sat back on the sofa, showing an exhausted expression. That meant we'd need to look at family medical records, and there was a risk the truth would come out, Walter continued. So we thought we'd just tell Amanda about being adopted and consider everything settled. By telling me the truth, you could protect Brittany's secret? Amanda gazed coolly at her father. You didn't care if I got hurt? That's not it, Walter weakly shook his head. I didn't want to lie anymore. You have the right to know the truth. But that should have protected Brittany's secret. How did you know about it? Patricia asked Amanda. Her eyes reflected question and surprise. I found it by chance when organizing Mom's desk. But I said nothing until today. I didn't want to destroy the family's peace, Amanda answered. She moved away from the window and stood before her parents. In the end, we were all hiding something. Amanda. Walter stood up and tried to approach his daughter. It's not that I don't love you. It's just that we weren't a real family? I was always second because we weren't blood related. Amanda interrupted her father. No. Patricia raised her voice. Amanda, you were my first child. You're my daughter. Blood doesn't matter. But it did matter, didn't it? To Dad, Amanda said quietly. Brittany carried his blood. That's why she was always special. Walter was at a loss for words. His silence attested to the truth of Amanda's words. I'm going back, Amanda said with determination. She started toward the stairs but turned back midway. But before I go, there's something I want to say. She slowly approached her parents. Thank you. For raising me. You may have lied, but you still accepted me as family. I'll live my own life in Chicago. But. She searched for words for a moment, find Brittany. She must be confused too. Patricia nodded tearfully. Amanda, you truly are a wonderful daughter. So much stronger and wiser than us. Tell that to Brittany too, Amanda smiled gently. She must be suffering now, knowing the truth. Amanda climbed the stairs and headed to her room. She needed to pack her belongings and prepare to leave this house. Her heart was filled with complex emotions, but she also felt a strange sense of release. Years of questions and anxieties had finally been resolved. She no longer needed to blame herself for not being a biological daughter. Amanda took a deep breath. This was a new beginning. The first step in a new life, knowing the truth. 6 months later, Chicago's early summer sunlight brightly illuminated Amanda's apartment. Sitting by the window, gazing at her laptop screen, Amanda's expression was peaceful. In her inbox was an unread email labeled from Brittany Griffin. Her fingers trembled momentarily, but Amanda took a deep breath and opened the email. Amanda, since that day, my life has completely fallen apart. I no longer know who I am. But I'm beginning to understand through counseling. For years, I've envied and hurt you. Maybe it was because I vaguely sensed who I really was. I'm not asking for forgiveness. But I want to meet and talk with you. The email ended stating that she planned to visit Chicago this weekend. Amanda read the email again with mixed feelings. In her own process of accepting being adopted, she had experienced many conflicts about her identity. Since that day, Amanda's relationship with her family had completely changed. Brittany had left home for another apartment and cut ties with her parents. Amanda occasionally spoke with Patricia on the phone, but with Walter, she still couldn't find the courage to exchange words. Amanda wrote back, "Brittany, thank you for your email. Of course we can meet. I have things I want to talk about too." 2 weeks later, at a cafe overlooking Lake Michigan in Chicago, Amanda and Brittany faced each other calmly for the first time in 5 years. Brittany had lost weight and had dark circles under her eyes. Without her former glamour, appearing in her natural state, she looked somehow fragile. "I went to meet my biological mother," Brittany said quietly, clutching her tea. "Linda was a complicated person. But as soon as she saw me, she burst into tears and apologized. She was a victim too. She believed she was loved by Dad, but in the end, she was abandoned." "And you?" Amanda asked. I've stopped blaming people. Especially you. You did nothing wrong. If anything, you were much stronger than me." Tears welled in Brittany's eyes. "For years, I was jealous, thinking you were loved by our parents. But in reality, neither of us knew the truth," Amanda said quietly. "I've started looking for my roots too. I haven't found my biological parents yet, but I hope you find them." Brittany smiled slightly. Afterward, the sisters gradually began talking about each other's lives. Brittany had quit her real estate job and started studying to become a counselor. Amanda was advancing plans to establish her own accounting consulting firm. "How is Patricia, Mom?" Amanda asked. "She's recovering little by little. She seems to have reconciled with Dad. They've both acknowledged their mistakes and are exploring a new relationship." On Christmas Day, the four of them gathered around one table for the first time in a long while. Both parents and Brittany visited Amanda's Chicago apartment. It wasn't a perfect relationship, but at least a new bond based on honesty and understanding had begun to grow. Walter said in his toast, "Blood ties don't make a family. Love and honesty make a family. We failed at both. But now, we've been given another chance to start over." Amanda and Brittany met eyes and quietly smiled at each other. Though they had no blood connection, through their shared pain and healing, they were beginning to become sisters in the truest sense. What is a true family? Not merely blood ties, but facing each other without lies, acknowledging each other's mistakes, and still having the determination to walk together. That's what Amanda came to understand. And she finally felt that she was truly a family member. Gazing at the sunset sinking into Lake Michigan, Amanda thought, perhaps this was the real birthday gift. A new beginning built on truth, free from secrets.